In 1990, two respected officers answered what seemed like a routine call on the edge of town and vanished without a trace. For 17 years, the case sat like a shadow over the community, whispered about but never solved. Then, during construction work on a marshy stretch of land, a cruise excavator struck something buried deep in the mud. The roof of an old patrol car. What they found, or didn't find inside, would drag the town back into the mystery and force long-buried secrets toward the surface. Shreveport, Louisiana, woke warm and heavy with moisture, the kind of morning that made shirts cling in the day. Bayou smell ride the streets. The Blue Heron diner buzzed while the jukebox spun an old tune. Coffee hissed. Pecan pie steamed. Danny Brooks parked the black and white under a live oak and tapped the steering wheel in time with the music. He had the easy grin of a man born to talk strangers out of trouble. In his breast pocket sat a silver pen. In his pants pocket, a small velvet case he never showed anyone. Lissa Martinez stepped out on the passenger side, hair tied back, sleeves rolled once, eyes that missed nothing. She carried a ritual, a 1977 quarter rubbed smooth. They were partners, and everyone on Cypress Avenue liked to claim a piece of them. The butcher raised a cleaver in hello. The florist held up a daisy. The crossing guard waved the cruiser through. Danny wrote a parking warning for a bakery driver and ended it with a smiley face and the line, "Drive slower, save my pen." The driver laughed and taped it to the register. Inside, Ms. Irene poured coffee without asking. "You two need calories if you're gonna keep rescuing cats from roofs," she said. "Ma'am, we have elevated our practice," Danny replied. "Today I plan to negotiate with a raccoon." "If it's a skunk, you talk to him," Lissa added, flipping the quarter and catching it. "Heads, you drive. Tails, I drive." The coin flashed and fell into her palm. Heads. Danny took the keys with a mock bow. By noon they had handled a fender bender and walked an old man back to his porch. At Mudcat's bar, a jukebox sang louder than the patrons. Two men squared off over pool. Danny spoke so soft they had to lean in. "Boys, if you fight, I'll miss the last slice of Miss Irene's pie. You want to live with that?" They chose mercy. Lissa gathered the cues and sent them home with a warning. Outside, heat shimmered. Jack Calloway, their fellow officer, rolled by and traded a nod with Danny and one careful look with Lissa. Long ago, Jack and Lissa had tried a life together. It hadn't worked, but respect remained. Near 3, Sheriff Emmett Landry checked in at the station. He had the calm of a man who could quiet a room by taking off his hat. He slapped Danny's shoulder and told Lissa she made the department look good. "Keep an ear by the river," he said. "Folks are dumping anything that fits in a truck bed, eyes open." Afternoon leaned towards storm. Janice Rowe at dispatch sent out the usual calls. Stray dog near Line Avenue. Fender bender by the grocery. Then her voice changed. Unit 7-2. Report of truck noise near Cypress Bridge, Old Kilburn Marsh access. Banging and lights by the water. Could be nothing. Could be kids. Danny looked at Lissa. Lissa flipped the quarter. "If it's a skunk, you talk to him," she said, smiling. The coin rose, spun, and came down tails. "You navigate. I'll talk sweet to whoever's making noise." 7-2 en route, Danny said. "We'll check Cypress Bridge." They rolled past the diner where Ms. Irene hung an open sign even as thunder grew. The river smell thickened, a mix of mud, iron, and something chemical that lived more in memory than air. Kilburn Marsh had been a gravel pit, then a teen hangout, then a place whispered about. On the approach to the bridge, Lissa pointed at cattails bent one way, the wind running its fingers along the water. "Hear that?" A hollow drum out in. The reeds, banging, then quiet. A truck engine turned over, struggled, quit. From the road, you could see just enough of the old service track to imagine anything hiding there. Janice crackled again. 7-2, copy. Copy, Danny answered. "We'll be on foot a minute. If it's kids, We'll send them home with a sermon." They stepped into the soft shoulder where grass gave way to silt. Lissa moved like someone who trusted the ground and made the ground trust her back. She aimed her flashlight wide. Danny listened. When the wind dropped, the marsh had its own breathing, slow and full of the life a city forgets until it needs it. What came next would be retold many ways. Some swore they heard a second vehicle. Others said a boat engine coughed on the far side. The only record that did not argue was the radio. At minute 21, Danny reported brief contact. At minute 26, a scrape like cloth on a mic. At minute 30, Janice called again and the answer came late, as if a hand had found the push to talk and then lost it. At minute 34, the channel fizzed. In that thin space before noise fills everything, Lissa did what she always did when fear not. She flicked the quarter and watched it spin, a bright circle over her palm. The coin landed tails. Somewhere near the reeds, water slapped concrete. Danny began to speak. The rest was a long, insistent hush. Shreveport searched until bugs swallowed floodlights and airboats ran out of gas. Deputies dragged the edge of the marsh. Volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder through cane. Divers moved across the dark water in patient lines. The river gave back cans, a grocery cart, a hubcap, and a rumor, not the truth. People taped missing posters to grocery doors and church boards. The Blue Heron kept coffee on until midnight. For weeks, Ms. Irene said, "They're coming back," every night, and meant it. Emmett Landry spoke on the courthouse steps and promised not to rest. He built a task force and called in favors. He stood with Danny's mother and Lissa's sisters and said the department would keep calling names until names answered. Time kept chewing. The marsh swallowed footprints and tire ruts. Some said the couple had run off. Some said they had crossed someone powerful. Others prayed into the quiet and wished the quiet would answer back. Years bent the town toward other worries. The jukebox played songs recorded on computers instead of guitars. People still told the story, the way a place holds one refrain to remember the rest. Then a May morning in 2007 came heavy and wet like the old days. The city approved a logistics park on the old marsh, and machines climbed down where cattails used to sing. An excavator dropped its bucket into mud and came up. Clanging, the operator squinted, wiped rain off his forehead, and signaled for everyone to hold. The bucket scraped again. Something hard lay beneath the marsh, something that did not belong to mud or root. A rectangle of metal pushed free of the mire, roof first, lights faint red and blue under a smear of brown. It was the top of an old Caprice, county colors buried. Except for the light bar dot, the operator fumbled for his phone, still staring as the shape lifted a little more. His voice shook as he called, "Detective, I think I just found history buried." The crew stepped back as the machine lifted another breath of mud and water. The roof rose higher until half the car showed, windows dark, doors sealed by time. And silt, the rest still held by the marsh as if a hand refused to let go. The excavator held its breath over the marsh while men in hard hats stared. Mud slid off the rising roof in slow sheets. A faint red and blue bar sat crooked on top, glazed with time. When the machine stopped, the marsh swallowed again and the car settled. Half-born Detective Nora Bell arrived with her hands in her jacket and a look that said she had seen worse and expected the same. "If I step in that, I charge overtime per gallon," she told the site boss. He laughed because he didn't know her yet. She didn't. The forensics van nosed in. Techs pulled boots and a silver toolbox that opened like a lunch pail. They rigged. Slings winched the Caprice to firmer ground and popped the back door with a crowbar. A smell rolled out that was more than marsh sweet, sharp, and chemical, the ghost of a factory. Nora's nose wrinkled once and went calm again. Solvent, the senior tech said. Old, chlorinated, by the note of it. Inside, the seats were sponges. The fabric had dried and been wet again 100 times, blooming with rust shadows. Near the seatbelt latch, An oval stain had set into the foam long ago, pale at the edges, dark in the center, like something once pressed there and would not lift. No bodies, no bones. The absence spoke louder than any discovery. A man in a windbreaker. Jogged up, hair in need of a plan, press badge backward. "Tell me a story, detective," he said. This was Caleb Reed from the local radio station, a walking archive who could sing every jingle since 1982. "I'll tell you if the swamp does," Nora said. "Until then, you can help by not falling in." "Noted," he said, and then leaned too far anyway to squint at the dashboard. "Huh, those light housings were screwed down by hand on the 88s. My uncle had one. You could stash a lot up there if you were stubborn." The techs worked the glove box first. A rusted hinge squealed. Inside, an evidence bag crinkled with the weight of a quarter, dull from skin. 2 ticket books fused by mold. A spare bulb. A packet of mints turned to sand. The quarter went into a new bag, the label written slow. Coin, quarter, 1977. Nora glanced at it and thought of the old briefing files that had mentioned a coin Lisa Martinez carried like a ritual. They moved to the light bar, 4 screws, 2 refused. The tech muttered kind words and meaner ones, then pried the housing loose. Something rattled inside, too heavy for a bulb. He tipped the frame, and a small black cassette slid out into his palm. The kind that held 30 minutes and a hiss dot. It had a strip of tape across the label, written in a hand that rushed and slanted. KM-7. Caleb whistled, a soft 3-note shape that wasn't quite a tune. 30 minutes of 1990, he said. "If it didn't drown." "Bag it," Nora said, but her voice had moved from dry to careful. The last surprise was wedged under the dash, taped in a nest of elastic bands that had melted into each other. The tech cut it free and lifted a small brass key, the flat kind that opens a box in a bank vault. Someone, long ago, had wrapped it in black electrical tape and tucked it where daylight forgot dotted the edge of the site. A woman in a green cardigan stood with her hand over her mouth. Nora knew her on site, Janice Rowe, who had been the voice of Dispatch the Night. Danny Brooks and Lisa Martinez went quiet. Time had drawn lines around her eyes in a way that made worry look permanent. "What's wrong, Ms. Rowe?" Nora asked. Janice pointed at the bagged cassette. "Those letters," she said, voice thin. "KM7. I wrote that once. I wrote it on a sticky note for a supervisor who told me it was too dramatic and turned it into noise by the river. I've kept that in my head so long it squeaks." "Nora, let that sit. Do you remember what it meant to you then?" "Kilburn Marsh. 7 was one of the drains or the sections. The boys in maintenance use numbers. All I know is I heard banging and voices and something heavy sliding, and I wrote KM7 so I wouldn't forget where the caller said to look." Caleb fished in his backpack and produced a battered cassette recorder the size of a paperback. "I brought this for interviews," he said, kidding. "I just never throw anything away." The young tech looked at it like a museum piece. "Does it even work?" "Only if you sweet-talk it." Caleb snapped the battery door with a flick. "If it eats the tape, that means it's authentic." He glanced at Janice. "You want the honors?" Janice shook her head. "My hands aren't steady enough." Nora nodded to the tech, who slid the cassette into the slot as if feeding a skittish animal. He pressed play. For a moment there was nothing but the hum of the machine. Then air-wide, cold, and full of small sounds came through, as if the marsh itself remembered how to breathe. Wind moved. Water licked concrete. Somewhere, a chain clinked once like a question. The tape hissed like a sleeping snake. Under it, a voice came so close that everyone stepped closer without meaning to. "If you see KM7, Lisa Martinez whispered, edges of words bitten off to keep them small. "Follow the water. It pulls." The recorder clicked faintly, hit the end, and began to rewind with a struggle. Caleb slapped it with the heel of his hand. "Don't make me beat you," he warned. The teen assistant from the forensic team blinked. "You power a cassette with a pen," he explained. "If we do this, you'll get extra credit in ancient history." They listened again. The same wind, the same lick of water, the same sentence. Stronger once you knew it was waiting there. Nora's notebook came out. She sketched a line that was more idea than map. 1 box for the bridge, 1 circle for the drain, arrows downriver. Her handwriting looked like she had taken a pledge against curves. "We need to trace every drain in the old marsh," she said. "All 7, if 7 existed. We need bank records for that key. And we need to look at everyone who ran trucks. Through here in 1990, Caleb ran ahead on memory. Whitlow and Sons Aggregate had the lease. Darren Whitlow runs the new site now. Red McKinnon at the junkyard bought anything with a rim and resold it as art. Pastor Gideon Cole's church lot. Backed onto the service road. Nights, trucks parked there so nobody paid attention. And, if we're drawing circles, Officer Jack Calloway was on the same shift as Danny and Lissa. He had, let's say, feelings. Let's say we ask questions, Nora said. They took the key to a bank that had changed names twice, but not carpets. The manager was a man whose haircut remembered the Reagan years. He read the tiny numbers on the bow of the key and frowned the way only someone who loved orderly boxes could frown. "We do still have that run of boxes," he said. "The system shows a rental opened in June of 1990 under Daniel Brooks. Number. Activity since September of that year. You will need a court order for the contents." An hour later, with a judge's fax curling on the machine like warm toast, they stood in the vault. The door was a wheel of steel and history. It sighed when it swung. The manager turned his key. Nora turned hers. The box slid out with the weight of a secret. Inside lay a velvet ring case and a folded road map gone soft at the creases. The map was a gas station freebie. On it, someone had drawn circles around the marsh in pencil and pressed so hard that tang lines dented the next layer a point by the bridge, a line of dots along the old cut where water had pooled, and a heavy circle on a square of concrete labeled by a handwritten note. Drain 7. In the corner was a string of letters, KM-7. Caleb did not reach for the ring. He looked at Nora instead, and for once in his life, he did not try to make a joke. Nora opened the velvet case. A simple gold band lifted the air inside the vault in a way no solvent smell could ever manage. A tiny engraving ran along the inside. Edge so small you had to breathe on it to see. LM&DB with a date that never arrived. She closed the case gently. He was going to ask, she said. Janice had come along and stood with her hands clasped at her waist. She'd have said yes, she said, simple as weather. Nora laid the map flat on the counter under a sheet protector. She traced the pencil. Circles with a capped pen, counting under her breath. 7 drains, she said. And one in particular that keeps raising its hand. KM-7, Caleb said. Not a code, not a riddle. A place, Nora replied. KM-7 is drain 7. Janice drew in a breath like someone who had waited 17 years to do it. The bank manager coughed into his fist and looked away. Nora straightened. The dry humor had left her for the moment and the calm had turned to resolve. I'm reopening Danny Brooks and Lissa Martinez, she said. Full case. I want the environmental permits for the quarry, trucking logs for 90 through 91, and Whitlow's payroll. I want the church maintenance notes. I want Red McKinnon's purchase slips for light bars and push bumpers. And I want Jack Calloway in a room with a chair that doesn't squeak. Caleb nodded. I'll pull archives on Whitlow and talk to my guy who keeps old county ledgers in his garage because his wife won't let him keep them in the dining room. Tell your guy I appreciate his marriage, Nora said. They put the items back the way they had found them, the map in a fresh sleeve, the ring in its case, the case laid in the box like a heart being returned to a chest. The manager slid the metal drawer home. The lid of the safe deposit box dropped with a quiet, final click. For a beat, the room held the shape of their silence. The ring had said its piece. The map had pointed its finger. Somewhere far from the cool of the vault, water moved where a pencil circle had once pressed down too hard and left a groove. Nora looked at Janice and Caleb. "Tomorrow," she said, "we follow the water." Morning came with the smell of butter and coffee at the Blue Heron Diner. Ms. Irene had taped old photos along the frame of the pass-through window for years' birthdays. Softball wins, prom corsage balanced on weary wrists. When Nora and Caleb walked in, she wiped her hands on her apron and pointed at a shoebox under the counter. "I kept meaning to sort these," she said. "They're from the summer the air conditioner died and from that fall." The fall. Caleb slid the rubber band free. "Artifacts from the pre-megapixel era," he said. He thumbed through glossy squares until one made him stop. A Polaroid, date stamped in red, September 16th, 90. In the foreground, steam curled off coffee. In the background, the diner window reflected the street like a second-world Cypress Avenue in miniature. "Look," Nora said in the reflection. A yellow truck idled across the way, tailgate down. Black stencil letters arced along the door, Whitlow and Sons. Behind it, stuck in the grass like a bookmark, a narrow wooden stake showed a thick, hand-painted code. B-7. Caleb squinted until his eyebrows collided. "We should enlarge it," he said. "The beauty of ancient chemistry is that it smells like a science fair and a crime scene at the same time." Tuck's Camera and Trophy Shop still did enlargements for hunters and grandparents. The owner let Caleb into the back because Caleb had once interviewed him about a duck that looked like Elvis. The dark room yawned warm and chemical. Caleb pulled on gloves like a surgeon with low ambitions. "You're narrating," Nora said. Through the door, "I narrate under stress," he answered. "Developer, stop bath, fixer 3 acts, need arcs." He laid the Polaroid under the enlarger, found the reflection by feel and habit, and coaxed the shadow into a frame. The first print came out muddy. The second sharpened. On the third, Nora could read the H in Whitlow as if a finger had written it on her window this morning. The B7 on the stake looked thick, impatient, like someone had painted fast. Back at the station, word ran ahead. A lab email waited for Nora. Preliminary report on the seat foam from the recovered car. Presence of chlorinated solvents. It read, followed by names that sound like coughs. Degreasers, dry cleaning cousins. The kind of chemicals that sit in soil and keep sitting. Not gas, Nora said. Not swamp rot. Industrial, Caleb said. The marsh ate our trash. And kept the receipt. They split interviews. Nora took Darren Whitlow first. His office at the new site wore hard hats like trophies. Through the window, machines crawled across earth that used to be water. Whitlow's smile belonged to a billboard. "I was a foreman back then," he said. "You don't forget a day like that, but I didn't see nothing. Our clocks say I punched out at 7. Nora slid the enlargement across the desk. "Your truck, after 7, reflected in a diner window. And a stake marked B7. What did B7 mean to your cruise?" Whitlow barely glanced. "Could be anything. Boundaries, boring logs. I don't memorize alphabet soup." "Who signed your time card?" He reached for a folder so fast the papers inside sighed. "Night clerk signed. Standard." "Same pen for a week, same angle on every signature?" Nora asked lightly. "Standard, too." His mouth tightened. "You're not pinning ghosts on me." "Ghosts don't need pins," she said, standing. "They find their own way back." Caleb drew Red McKinnon at the Junkyard, a kingdom of things that refused to be finished. Red had hung a chrome bumper as a wind chime that played one note in the breeze. "Caprices?" Red said, scratching his jaw. "I loved them. Steel you could weld without it crying." He produced a receipt book that looked like a crossword puzzle done in 4 inks. Dates slid around the squares. Totals traveled from line to margin and back. This says you bought a light bar from an unknown seller 3 weeks after the disappearance, Caleb said. Red leaned in. Or it says I sold a light bar to an unknown buyer. Or it says I had coffee and my hand slipped. Pick your own adventure, radio boy. I didn't touch their car. Caleb smiled. I'll take a copy for my math teacher. Nora and Janice visited Pastor Gideon Cole in the church office that smelled like lemon oil in storage. He met them with a gentle handclasp and a memory of that week. We held a prayer vigil, he said, midnight to 2. Whole town was hurting. Sign-in sheet? Nora asked. He produced a binder. The page for that night carried a modest list of names, each written in the same blocky hand, each checkmark. A twin. Janice's mouth thinned. Busy night, Nora said. Who parked on your lot? Church folks, the pastor said. Always welcome. Trucks? We're a church, he said, as if the noun answered everything. When Nora asked for a copy, his smile flickered. You don't think we had anything to do, I think your lot touches the old service road, she said, and roads. Remember tires. The hardest visit was Jack Calloway. He met them at the back of the station, away from ears. Time had made him broader and quieter. He crossed his arms, as if holding himself together. You had a 36-minute hole in your log the night they went missing, Nora said. Where were you? In the field, he said. Dispatch dead zone by the refinery, same as always. Service records say your radio was fine, Nora said. Then the air was broken, he snapped, then softened. I know what it looks like. Lissa and I were over a long time by then. I didn't hurt them. He looked away, found a spot on the wall, and held it. I loved her, but what killed those two wasn't wearing a badge. Nora let the silence have him for account. Then help me prove it, she said. By late afternoon, the forensics chief called with a steadier version of the earlier note. Traces of trichloroethylene and friends in the seat foam and carpet, he said. Not from a bottle spill in the back seat. Soaked from below, wicked up. If you dumped drums into water and put a car in after, you'd smell this 20 years. Later. Janice stood in the doorway, hands wringing a dish towel she must have carried out of habit. I need to tell you something I should have told stronger, she said. I wrote, cans dropping into water, on my note that night. Metal on metal. Then splash, I took it to his supervisor. He told me to file it as river noise so people wouldn't panic. I kept a copy for a while. I was young. I threw it away. I hear it at night. Her eyes were wet, but her voice held steady. Someone wanted it smaller. Not anymore, Nora said. We're going to make it the size it is. They drove to the new Whitlow site before the sun went down, the marsh now a grid of roads on filled dirt and the color of machines. A temporary fence stood where reeds had once whispered. Beyond it, a concrete throat cut into the ground, the new Drain 7 poured over the bones of the old. Nora flashed an order from the city engineer authorizing inspection. The foreman pretended not to read. Backup alarms wailed. A loader beeped like a metronome for danger. Safety rules, the foreman said, spreading his hands. Vests, spotters, lots of reasons to come back tomorrow. Tomorrow is when evidence learns to walk, Nora said. We're here now. Mud climbed their boots to the laces. Janice stood with the clipboard like a woman guarding her younger self. Caleb slid once and performed a dance he named the eel. You saw that, he muttered. It was athletic. At the edge of the drain, a rusted gate sat shut, bolted by a bracket that had seen every season twice. Water seeped along the seams. Nora pointed. Open it, she told the foreman. Can't, he said. Need a key, need a reason. Your reason is the state of Louisiana, Nora said. Your key is a crescent wrench and a man with shoulders. Whitlow himself appeared, suit jacket wrong for mud, smile built for rotaries and ribbon cuttings. He took in the vests, the forms, the faces, and he went tight around the eyes. Detective, this is a live site, he said. Liability is a beautiful word until you spell it in court. Dead sight, Nora said. 17 years dead. We're opening that gate. He glanced toward the river, then toward the bridge beyond the earthworks, the old cypress bridge sitting like a witness that never slept. You're making a mess, he said. Good, Nora said. Mess shows what was under clean. The foreman sighed as if oxygen cost money, sent a worker for tools, and came back with a bar that had pried hundreds of stubborn things. 2 men leaned into the bolts. Metal protested, then moved a hair, then half an inch. Mud belched. The gate shivered. Hold, Whitlow snapped. Keep going, Nora answered. The final bolt screamed like a hawk and let go. The gate jumped against the bracket. Water, held back by habit and pressure, took the invitation. It hit the gap with a fist and became a pull, not a flow, not a trickle, but a throat clearing after years of not speaking. Nora felt the ground quiver under her solace. Caleb grabbed Janice's elbow. The foreman swore a prayer. In that same breath, Whitlow turned and started moving, fast and wrong, toward the cypress bridge as the drain roared open and the water yanked hard enough to make ropes sing. The gate gave way and the drain roared like a long throat clearing after years of silence. Water dragged mud and reeds into the dark. Whitlow took one look at that pull and ran for the shadow of Cypress Bridge, legs high, jacket wrong for the pay. Ground he had chosen. Nora went after him with steady breath and short steps. Caleb followed and immediately learned that mud has opinions. His foot skated, his arms windmilled, and he saved himself by grabbing a sapling that complained about employment conditions. Keep up, Nora said without looking back. I am conducting a study on gravity, Caleb answered, scraping sludge off his radio with a stick. Under the bridge, the air felt colder. Whitlow climbed the riprap and slipped. He ended up on one knee, palms to rock. When he turned, his face had lost its billboard smile. All right, he said. Truce. I can tell you what you want. What I want is the truth, Nora said. And for you to stop wasting my shoes. I buried the wrong thing that night, Whitlow said. But the squad car in the mud, that was the sheriff's order. Name the sheriff, Nora said. Landry, he said. Emmett Landry. He said the town couldn't take a scandal. Make noise one way so nobody listens the other. He told me to push the car where the marsh would eat it. Caleb arrived breathing hard. Do you have proof? He asked. Or just sins you find convenient to confess? Whitlow jabbed a finger toward the works across the marsh. I can show you a map of drums, he said, buried in a line. Marked in our codes, open drain 7 and follow the pull. But I want immunity. You want air and coffee that doesn't taste like guilt, Nora said. You'll get a lawyer and a chance to talk fast. She waved for the foreman, who had come up with 2 workers and a rope. You're not leaving. By the time they hauled Whitlow to level ground, rain began. Paramedics checked his knee and loaded him into a truck for a look at the clinic. A deputy rode along. Nora sent a second car behind, in case the first one remembered other errands. She stood under the bridge and let the cold of the stone straighten her thoughts. Landry, the man who had stood with mothers and said the department would not rest. Her mind tried to push the name away. The name kept sliding back. Back at the station, she pulled files and found memos from 1990 with Landry's initials at the corner. Requests to retask boats. Notes about prioritizing tips from trusted sources. A directive that any report of river noise be cleared as non-urgent unless tied to a named victim. The lab called. The chemist had cross-checked the chlorinated solvents from the seat foam with cores taken today from the subsoil of the old quarry. Same family, same ratios, he said. I'd say the car sat in water seasonally spiced with degreaser. Seasonally spiced, Caleb said. Like gumbo for machines. They tried the radio room. The clerk pointed them to a tub of old dispatch tapes. Caleb threaded a player that wheezed but obeyed. The recording rolled. Check-ins, plates called, laughter clipped short. Then, tiny gaps that were not gaps, fractions shaved from ends of sentences, a breath swallowed here, a syllable replaced there, as if someone had spliced the night and smoothed the tape. Ghost channels, Caleb said. Noisy enough too. Hide edits. Someone made that night shorter. Who had the tools and the nerve? Nora asked. Same list as before, he said. Who had motive? That list is shrinking. They stopped at the Blue Heron. Ms. Irene pushed 2 bowls of gumbo their way and did not ask. Fine now, Janice waited in the kitchen, hands in dishwater. Because hands need something. I used to think I misheard, she said. Then I thought maybe the marsh learned to talk. She gave a thin laugh. He told me to call it river noise. I taught myself to believe it. You were the only person in the building that night who wrote the truth, Nora said. I idolized him, Janice said. We all did. I did too, Nora said. He gave me my first field jacket and told me to sew my name on straight. The phone on Nora's hip vibrated. A deputy's voice climbed over a bad connection. Detective, you better come back to site. We got a non-incident. They drove hard. Blue light pulsed off puddles. At the edge of the pit, flood lamps burned over a scene with footprints. A backhoe sat crooked, engine ticking down. In the trench beside it lay Darren Whitlow, jacket torn, face at an angle that didn't belong to sleep. Operator says he slipped. The foreman told them. Machine lurched. He went under the bucket. Freak accident. Nora crouched and let her eyes take inventory. The mud showed struggle, but not the right kind. The controls wore a glaze of fresh prints over old grime. The safety wedge that should have been pinned in place lay 5 feet away, too clean for where it sat. Someone is cleaning up, she said. The coroner's van took Whitlow. Nora stood by the drain and felt the pull again, softer now that the gate had swung back. She watched the dark opening and thought about instructions that sound like mercy and move like knives. Back at her desk, she pulled every memo with Landry's mark. He had nudged searches away from the marsh after the second day. He had sent extra units to patrol an unrelated protest on the 3rd. He had insisted that community comm required that rumors of dumping be treated as seasonal grumbling. Caleb returned with a printout of every call Landry made from his office that week. He spoke to the quarry number 4 times, Caleb said. He spoke to the pastor 3, to Red twice, to the state environmental office once for 5 minutes. You sure? I'm as sure as a man can be who has read the phone bill of 1990 and lived. Then here's our list, Nora said. She drew boxes, names, arrows until the guard page looked like a map a river might understand. When a person you trusted moves from center to edge, it feels like losing your balance on a floor you built. Nora sat with that tilt. She remembered Landry handing a lollipop to a scared kid. She remembered him after funerals, hat in hand. She set those memories next to Whitlow's words. Near closing, Janice came to the station with a small spiral notebook wrapped in wax paper. I kept this wrong, she said. She put it on Nora's desk like an overdue book. On the page for September 16th, 1990, her young hand had written, trucks at midnight, cans in water. The next line in someone else's pen, sod, river noise. Only someone above you could change this in the system, Nora said. Janice nodded. He told me it would help the town. Nora reached for the phone. She dialed a number she had known half her life. When Landry answered, his voice carried the same steady that made bad news sound like a plan. Sheriff, she said, I want to revisit a blind spot at Drain 7, old business, tonight. There was the smallest pause. Then he said, warm as always, all right, Nora, bring only those you trust. Night laid a hand on the marsh, and the reeds answered with a dry whisper. The wind came in small runs, nudging the cattails and lifting the smell of iron and algae. Drain 7 waited where the new site met the old, a concrete throat sunk in, filled dirt, its mouth squared by a frame of angle iron and a heavy grate scabbed with rust. To the right, a rust-eaten catwalk ran across the outfall, a ribbon of steel slick with condensation. 2 manual valve wheels rose from the slab like black flowers, their stems bolted to pipes that vanished into the concrete. Everything sweated. Nora. Belle parked down the service road with her lights off and walked in with a flashlight held low. When the beam touched the grate, it reflected dull and red as if it remembered sirens better than stars. She checked her coat one last time. The micro-recorder sat stitched into the inside pocket, the tiny mic nested under the lapel button. She fat-fingered the slider to RM and felt the faintest hum. In the distance, beyond a row of machines sleeping under tarps, Caleb Reed lifted 2 fingers. He stood with Station 4's B Shift 2 firefighters with a coil of rope and a throw bag, each behind a loader bucket for wind cover. Line of sight, no heroics. Per the plan, Emmett Landry arrived with the unhurried steps of a man who had never doubted a door would open for him. Hat set square, jacket clean. His flashlight stayed mostly aimed at the ground, as if he were more interested in the path than the place it led. His voice, when it came, could have asked a child to tie a shoe or a jury to trust its better angels. Evening. Nora, evening, Sheriff. You were always one for bad coffee and late questions, he said, stopping beside her. He did not glance toward the shadows where Caleb and the firefighters stood. Drain 7, he added, like a teacher pleased to hear a student pronounce something hard. I used to bring new deputies out here to teach them where water goes. Lissa taught me, Nora said. On a tape. Landry's light slipped over the valve wheels. Ah, he said. You found that. You reclassified Janice's note, she said. I reclassified a lot of notes, he said. A town is a delicate thing. You know that now. Jobs come. Like birds you clap rom, they scatter. He put his hand on a valve stem and left it there, not turning. 90 was mean. Plants balancing books with one finger on the scale. Truckers taking cash to forget where they were. We were one storm away from boarded windows. And Danny and Lissa? Good kids, he said, and it sounded honest. Enough to hurt. Curious kids. They saw a line and stepped over it before they knew who drew it. They came out here quick and loud. I asked them to slow down. They didn't understand the size of it. The size of what? He lifted his lamp and washed the grate and the black water behind it with light. The pull of the outflow made a sound like a throat thinking. The size of keeping the lights on, he said. A sheriff does more than write tickets. He keeps the dinner rush fed. He keeps the plant whistle blowing. He keeps the Sunday plate full. Nora let the wind fill the space after that, because letting a man hear himself is sometimes the most generous kind of cross-examination. Walk me through your map, she said. He smiled faintly. KM7, he said. Kilburn Marsh, Drain 7. The old works were sloppy. When the new boys poured this, they built over the same bones. See that flange? He tapped the steel with his knuckle. Bypass valve. You open it. You goose the draw. He stepped onto the catwalk. It rang under his weight, a note too thin for faith. Watch your step, he said. She's slick. She followed, one hand on the rail, boot solace setting down. Careful and flat, the grate breathed at her shoulder. The smell strengthened, a chemical echo riding the wet, the same note she had tasted in the recovered seats. She felt the vibration of water through steel, a low purr under the skin. Why? Here? She asked. Because here pulls, he said. Always has. He turned the smaller wheel a quarter. The pitch of the drain changed, just a shade, enough to lift the hair along her forearm. He watched her feel it. You hear that? Like a tide in a pipe. In her head, Lissa whispered exactly where the sound fit. If you see KM7, follow the water, it pulls. The words braided with a flash of a coin spinning and the small velvet case in a cold vault. The breath she had let out when the engraving appeared from fog. The life that could have been. "Who told you to put the car in the marsh?" she asked. He didn't look at her. "I told the foreman where to park noise," he said. "No one needed any more noise." "And the kids?" The word came out before she could change it. "What did you do to the kids?" "I tried to slow them down," he said, still watching the valve. "Some nights the road takes people because the road needs a story to warn the rest. This was a night like that." "You opened the gate," she said. "I turned a wheel," he said. "We all turn wheels." He took a step, and his shoulder brushed hers, the gentle nudge a crowd gives without thinking. The catwalk shifted, or the wind did, or the world did. She caught the railing and felt the slick paint slip under her glove. He took another half-step, the kind of half-step that crowds a person toward a choice. "Careful," he said softly. "Don't want you to go where they went." She planted, her left hand on the grate, fingers deep into square openings cold as coins. Her right hand slid into her coat pocket and found the phone she'd kept there because radios have manners and phones don't. She thumbed the screen awake, opened the channel Caleb had set, and hit the word that said live. The haptic buzz under Weeva. Her thumb felt like a small heart hammering in her palm. "Sheriff," she said, keeping her voice even. "Say that again." He studied her face, reading it like a report. The grandfather tone thinned. "You always were stubborn," he said, and reached past her for the larger valve, the bypass with a wheel that took 2 hands to move. The spokes groaned. The line shuddered. The drain woke another inch. The pull became a grip. From beyond the loader bucket, Caleb stepped forward and put a hand up high, fingers spread, a quiet plea. "Enough." One of the firefighters knelt and clipped a carabiner to the rope. The other fed it through their hands. "So it would not when it mattered. You could have called the state," Nora said, breath shorter now because the air had begun to move, stolen by the throat. "You could have shut the site." "I could have broken a town," he said. "I could have sent your mother home from the diner with half a shift. You think I didn't do the math? You wouldn't have had a job to grow into if I'd let panic eat us." "You don't get to ride the ledger with people," she said. He stepped closer again, and this time the nudge had intent. Her boot slid the width of a coin. The rail was cold enough to bite through the glove. The grate thrummed. She switched the phone to speaker without looking, and the wind carried a scrap of Caleb's voice back to her tinny. "Urgent there. Say it plain," she said. His eyes were old and clear and tired. "They were going to pull the lid off and drown us in it," he said. "I made sure the lid stayed on. I told Whitlow where to push. I told the pastor to keep his lot open and his eyes closed. I told Red to keep his receipts creative. I told Jack to make noise somewhere else. I told the girl at the board that river noise is just what a river does. We got through the decade." He took a breath that sounded like a man climbing stairs. "We kept our own alive." "You decided who counted," she said. He moved faster than the weight of his years should have allowed. His shoulder drove into her chest with just enough, forced to steal balance without admitting intent. She hit the grate with her forearm. Pain lit her elbow. Her other hand shot to the rail and found nothing but wet. A boot went sideways. The pull got teeth. "Landry!" Caleb shouted from the dark. Nora hooked her arm through a square of the grate so deep the metal bruised bone. "Don't do this," she said, and heard in her own voice the exact note she used with jumpers on the river bridge firm without fear, the one that asks a person to step back into themselves. He reached past her again, not for her, but for the chain on the safety gate that kept people from the last 3 feet. The gate was a panel of rebar and wire mesh set on hinges that had forgotten how to swing. A brass padlock held it shut, greened with age. Landry's hand found a wrench tucked onto a bracket where workers forgot tools when the shift ran long. The wrench had a jaw big enough to eat bolts. Caleb was moving now, rope skimming across the ground, one firefighter running at his shoulder, the other bracing to throw. "Nora, hold," Caleb said. "Hold." She pulled air into her chest in small, fast sips. Her palm had gone numb where metal pressed the nerve. The phone at her hip sent the line to the world she needed to witness. "Don't," she said. "Walk away." He looked past her for the first time, toward the loader bucket and the shapes behind it. His eyes did an old calculation distance. Angles, who would get here first, what the water wanted. "Bring only those you trust," he said softly, almost sadly. "I trusted you to understand." He lifted the wrench. The catwalk hummed under their boots. The drain's voice deepened to a throatier pull as the bypass bled more river. He set the wrench's mouth over the padlock and drew back his shoulder. "Landry!" Caleb again closer, boots pounding, rope paying out. A throwbag arcing in a test swing. Nora gripped until her fingers screamed. The grate's cold climbed into her wrist. The wind pressed at her back like a hand that had made up its mind. The wrench came down once and the lock rang like a small bell. He hit it again, harder. On the third strike, metal gave the way old bones do reluctant. Then all at once, the padlock split. The gate jumped. Water surged forward, fast and eager. The pull turning to a lunge, leaving Nora wedged between the opening mesh and the black mouth of Drain 7 as the current reached for her. The lock split. The gate kicked, and the drain took a long, hungry breath. Nora felt the pull climb her boots and try her balance. Metal bit into the crook of her elbow where she'd hooked the grate. Cold went through glove and sleeve and bone. "Line!" Caleb shouted. One firefighter anchored a rope around a bollard. The other clipped a carabiner to a waist harness and ran low along the catwalk. "Hold, Nora. Talk to me." She thumbed her phone to speaker. "I'm here." Landry raised the wrench again, eyes clear, jaw set. The calm of a man who had convinced himself he was still saving people. "Step back," he said, as if the water would obey his tone. "This is not your place to stand." "This is exactly my place," Nora said. "Tell me what you did in 1990. You want absolution," he said. "You want math. All right." He glanced at the shadows where Caleb and the firefighters moved. He kept his voice low, like a bedtime story. "We had drums coming in the back way, solvents, trichloro, whatever the fine print says. Came on flatbeds at night. Boys slid them into the cut and prayed the river would keep a secret. And Danny and Lissa saw them," Nora said. She pressed her forearm harder into the grate, found a deeper square, and locked herself to it. "They did more than see," Landry said. "They had a girl at the diner who'd been leaving notes under sugar jars. Wanted me to move that girl out of harm. They were already on their way here when I called them back. I told Jack to make noise across town so the radios would look busy." "Jack was your decoy," Nora said. Landry nodded once. "Whitlow ran the machine," he said. "He put the car where it would steal eyes. Pastor Cole kept his lot open and didn't ask questions. Red could make anything with a serial number look like scrap. I kept the phones quiet. I took Janice's river noise and let it be the truth people could hold." The firefighter reached her, dropped to a knee, and clipped the rope to the back of her belt in a motion practiced 100 times with people on bridges. "I've got you," he said, breath steady. "Say their names," Nora told Landry, keeping her voice even, keeping him talking. "Say what you did to them." He looked at the black mouth of the drain, at the old water that remembered the Dean. Old map. The grandfather tone broke. "I stopped them," he said. "I stopped them from tearing the lid off and drowning the town in it. I told Whitlow to hide the car. I told a couple of men to hold the kids by the drains until the storm. Rose and the pull would do what I could not put in a report. I told myself it was mercy." "Mercy doesn't need a secret," Nora said. He swung the wrench toward her, not as high, more a hammer than an axe. The firefighter threw his weight back on the line. The catwalk sang. The gate yawned another inch. Water reached and slapped her boots. Her grip screamed. Caleb was there now, one hand on the rail, one on Landry's sleeve. "Enough," Caleb said. This is live. Your voice is going to sit in a room with 12 chairs. Landry was overpowered before he could strike again, the wrench wrenched from his hands and his body pinned to the catwalk. With firefighters hauling her back, Nora broke free from the grate's pull and collapsed onto the metal with Caleb beside her, relief sharp and fleeting. The recorder was still on, capturing every word as Landry finally confessed how in 1990 he'd ordered the patrol car sunk to distract from illegal toxic dumping, while Danny and Lissa were held at the drains until the rising current finished the job. Whitlow had run the machinery, Jack created a diversion, the pastor lent his parking lot, and Red disposed of the car parts. Public Works crews soon opened the downstream gate. Out came a sheen of oil, the old stake marked B7, corroded chemical drums and human remains. Among them, Nora recovered Lissa's worn 1977 quarter, and Caleb found Danny's silver pen. The discovery spread fast. By morning, townspeople gathered at Cypress Bridge, bringing flowers, coffee, and quiet reverence. A memorial case displayed the coin, while Janice publicly admitted her regret over allowing the truth to be rewritten as river noise. Live on air, Caleb told the story straight, ending with, 17 years of silence broke tonight under the bridge. The wind, the whisper, the warning enough to carry a voice home. Nora returned the quarter to Lissa's mother and placed the pen beneath Danny's portrait at the station. Landry faced charges, and others involved came forward. That evening, the tape played once at the memorial. Wind, water, a faint clink, and Lissa's final whisper. If you see KM7, follow the water, it pulls. Faces turned toward the drain, no longer with fear, but with the certainty that the water had given back what it had kept.